I was like an actor as a kid. Like I did commercials and stuff, my sister and I, when we were kids. So I think I always liked doing that and wanted to do that. But then as soon as I got out of college, I remember I went back to my old like manager, and I was like, 22 years old or whatever, and she was like, yeah, I can still represent you. And she sent me out for stuff where it was like, oh man, like 5th grade's gonna be so hard. And I was like, I'm like old and have boobs, like I can't do it.
Hey, Pardon Turkeys, my name is Marcos Gonzalez, and this is Inside the Funny or Die Vault. We're gonna take a look back at classic Funny or Die videos and talk internet comedy and culture from then to now. And my guest today is a writer, actress, and showrunner who has written for 30 Rock and The Mindy Project and created Great News, the Saved by the Bell revival, and is working on the upcoming The Four Seasons. She's also a mentor of mine, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
Tracy Wingfield, welcome to the Funny or Die Vault.
Thanks, Marcos. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we get into all the questions that I have for you, we are going to talk about the video you chose,
Yes.
Between Two Ferns with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And just for everybody who hasn't watched it or hasn't seen it in a while, the video is Zach Galifianakis interviewing Barack Obama, and they kind of just like roast the shit out of each other for like a second.
I have to say, when I heard that like people actually watch this show, I was actually pretty surprised.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Between Two Ferns. I'm your host, Zach Galifianakis, and my guest today is Barack Obama, President Barack Obama.
Good to be with you, Zach.
First question. In 2013, you pardoned the turkey. What do you have planned for 2014?
My first question, which is how we start it always, is why this video, why you liked it?
Well, I love Between Two Ferns. I always thought they were so funny. And I remember we would always watch them in the writer's room at 30 Rock. And I remember watching this one and just thinking it was so, even watching it now, it's like so refreshing and funny that a president is willing to like make fun of themselves. Like Zach is like, shh, and like keeps telling him he's being boring and like annoyed that he has to like plug the ACA. It's like so funny.
It's crazy like trajectory he had too, because I feel like when he started, it was like comedians like Michael Cera and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then to be able to get like the actual president of the United States, it's just like a giant jump, and they like shot
Yeah, I
it.
would say so. A giant jump from
Yeah.
Michael Cera to
And then
Obama.
they shot it like
yeah.
the diplomatic office, which is insane. They just let it happen. I think when I was interning at Funny or Die, it must have been around the time, because I remember getting a call, and it must have been like my 3rd or 4th call, where it was like, hi, this is the vice president's office. And I was like, ha ha ha. Like,
You're kidding.
why would they call here? Like, you know what I mean? And of course they were
Shut
like,
up! Stop pranking me.
oh, yeah, and then I had to like pass it to a producer, and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't have answered that. We got this." And I was like, "Oh God, like what the hell?" But it was such an interesting time to be an intern there, because they were making such cool shit like that. So what were you doing?
So I had
2014?
just moved to LA, and I was a writer on the Mindy Project.
Okay,
And I
very
think we
cool.
watched that video in the room, as I remember,
Okay.
and all thought Obama was such a good actor too.
Yeah, I didn't think he'd be such a good roaster.
Yeah,
Because Zach is usually so
he shouldn't do that, but he could like be.
really well.
Oh yeah, or he could be like the lead of anything, a medical procedural, if
right,
he
so
wanted to.
Yeah. All right, so talking Mindy Project, let's back up a bit. So how did you get to TV writing? Where did you start?
Right. So I started in New York. So I graduated. I went to Boston College, and I was like an English and a theater major. And then I got out of school, and I was trying to get in like any kind of job, and I applied to the NBC Page program, rejected. And then I got a job as a page on The Late Show with David Letterman was my first
very
job.
cool.
And it was, mostly just like handing out tickets to people and like telling them where the bathroom was and stuff. And then from there, I got a job on a show that was canceled called Knights of Prosperity. That was like a show on ABC about guys. It was like Donald Logue was trying to rob Mick Jagger. I don't know if you saw it. But I was like a PA there.
Cool.
And it was like guys who were EPs on Letterman is how I got that job. And then when that show was canceled, I just kind of went around Silver Cup Studios where it filmed with my like printed out resume. That's how old I am. And like handed it places. And 30 Rock filmed there. And I got a job as a writer's assistant on 30 Rock. And then I became a writer season 4 and was there till the end.
Okay, and like while you were there, sidebar, because I know you did UCB stuff too.
Yes,
you wanted to be a performer as well.
Yeah.
Was that like simultaneous while you were also PAing?
It was. So I got on a Herald team at UCB in New York, I think when I was like a writer's assistant at 30 Rock, because I was in the writer's room and I was like, oh, this seems really hard and intimidating, because everyone was like, you know, pitching stuff so fast and so funny. And it was like a lot of people who did UCB, like Donald Glover was a writer there, and Tina and Kay Cannon and Tammy Sager, like they all did UCB too, or they were from Second City, or they had some improv background. So I was like, oh, maybe this will make me not be like stupid and slow anymore.
So did you want to be like a performer, or was it just always writing?
I mean, both, I guess. Like I was like an actor as a kid. Like I did commercials and stuff, my sister and I, when we were kids. So I think I always liked doing that and wanted to do that. But then as soon as I got out of college, I remember I went back to my old like manager, and I was like, you know, 22 years old or whatever. And she was like, yeah, I can still represent you. And she sent me out for stuff where it was like, oh man, like 5th grade's gonna be so hard. And I was like, I'm like old and have boobs. Like I can't do this. But also I think just auditioning again, I don't know if it was like, not traumatizing, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I can do this as like a job where my whole job is just auditioning for stuff and not getting it. So I kind of pivoted pretty quickly, especially meeting people at 30 Rock and stuff, that I was like, oh, this is so fun to write, and it would be great to write stuff for myself, but really like the writing is like where it was at for me.
Yeah, and I feel like obviously 30 Rock like took off, like one of the greatest comedies of all time. Do you feel like it was like a boot camp for you, like learning like the ins and outs of
yes, I feel very lucky that I was there, because I think so many shows don't last long or are kind of like bad or not your taste or whatever, and it was like a dream job to get to be there as an assistant and learn how they break stories and write episodes and rewrite and stuff. That it was so, I mean, it was hard, but it was really cool.
What's like, and this is probably because I'm a giant comedy fan, like what's the biggest thing or like the most memorable thing you learned from someone like Tina Fey, for example?
You know, I mean, I'm working with Tina again right now. And one of the things, I mean, first of all, she's just like, it's a cliche and obvious and stupid to say, but she's just like such a good writer. Like even now, she'll like hand in an outline and I'll be like, wow, this is so good. It's like, yeah, no shit, stupid. It's like she's won Mark Twain prizes for being the best comedy writer in the world. But I think a thing that she has, and maybe it's an improv thing, but not everybody has it, is like she's soft-spoken in person, and she is so good at listening to other people, collaborating, and taking things from other people and improving on them, that, you know, she's not just like a person who comes into the room and is like, here's my funny idea and do it like I said it, like the exact opposite. I think she's like so open to collaboration, and it's kind of why, and maybe it's SNL or improv or something, but I think it's why she's such a kind of like singular talent.
So that's crazy, because I feel like I say the same thing about you, because we obviously worked on Saved by the Bell together.
Yeah.
And I remember coming in and being like super nervous. I think the first week I was chill because I didn't look up anybody's names. I just was like, I knew who you were.
So you're like, I don't even know what people's jobs are. You're like kissing up to PAs and stuff.
Exactly. I was like, who are all these guys? I don't care. I'll just pitch a bunch of stuff. And then like after a week, I remember someone being like, all right, settle down. And then I like looked up everybody, and it was like Matt Warburton and you know all these big names, and like prolific writers. And I was like, I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah, but you can't either. Like when you're a staff writer, like it's a hard line to walk, because it's like you're intimidated, but also, you know, I mean, I've known staff writers who just like are scared and don't say anything the whole time, and they get fired too. So it's like, you know, you do have to talk.
I definitely was. I was worried, but you did such a good job of like, you know, sometimes I'd say something that like had no tether to whatever the story was, or like I would just say something out loud, and like sometimes I'd whisper it, and you'd be like, "What was that?" And I'd be like, "Oh God."
Say it again.
Yeah, and sometimes it'd work out, and sometimes it didn't, but it did make me feel like super comfortable. And it took me, I think, like a season or two. I mean, granted, season 2 was like all, you know, Zoom because of pandemic and all that crap. Right. But then I started to feel comfortable in like talking about ideas, and I think season 2 we ended up with that like Aisha thing where I was able to write stuff in Spanish and like find that and it took me a second to do that, but it was like all very much because you were like leading it and like helping me feel comfortable, which was cool.
Thanks.
To go back really quickly, because obviously Tina Fey taught you a bunch. Did you learn anything from like Tracy Morgan?
Did I personally learn
just out of
from
curiosity?
Tracy Morgan?
If you did, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Curious.
I mean, he was really nice. He's so funny and so kind of like naturally funny that like anything he says, like even saying the line. Yeah, I guess what I learned from him was like, because I think culturally at 30 Rock, like it was not an improv show and it was not a loose show. It was like things were written and, there were a million jokes on every page and things were written to be said exactly like they were written. That was not my, like, because of me. It was because of like the smart people running the show. But I think Tracy is a certain kind of actor that like can say anything and sometimes can say a line wrong or different and it's funnier. And I think like when you're making a TV show, it's nice to leave room for that. And it's like, not always. You don't want to just like run a sloppy show where it's just like, just say whatever. And the crew's like, can I go home to my children, please? But it's like, I think you want to leave room where it's like, yeah, get the scene as it's written and it's good. But like, if you have certain special actors who are just naturally funny, like also let them do one where they do whatever weird thing you probably couldn't have thought of in a room.
And then just, trajectory-wise, to go from like PA to writer to then like winning an Emmy in the last season. Like,
right.
What was that like? Did it affect your career? Like, I mean,
yeah,
obviously
I think
it
did
career,
good.
like,
I think it was good for my career.
It was a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. Like I had such a good I've had such a good experience there, and I learned so much. It was very. It was incredibly. I'm sure it was because I was good at writing, but it was also incredibly kind of them to let me write the finale. Like I wasn't there in the first season creating the show with them, so I felt very grateful for that. And and then it was cool. It was like kind of from there, it was a completely different experience going into 30 Rock and just trying to get your first shot writing was then obviously very different than like coming off of it and having won an award and kind of having established yourself a little bit. So, it was exciting. It was like there were more opportunities. Unfortunately, they kind of were all out here. Like I had a job offer, I remember, in New York, but it was like all the exciting ones were kind of out here. So then I had to move to LA. Yeah. And
then like fast forwarding to like today, so I was just scouring Twitter and I realized that like The Bear broke 30 Rock's like nomination record for comedies.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious like how you feel about comedies today, because obviously The Bear skews a little bit more dramatic. It's not as like hard funny as 30 Rock.
Yeah.
And, like how do you feel about that? Do you feel like things are like kind of shifting this like dramedy type thing?
I think it goes like it goes in waves, right? Like I love The Bear and I think it's like a really, really good show. I don't know, is it a comedy? Like because there are also shows nominated that I would consider like hard, funny comedies, like Abbott Elementary, So I think like, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a question of like, what is the state of comedy in general? That I'm not really worried about. Who cares? Because it's like, yeah, there's always been shows that are kind of dramatic, but are considered comedies or put in categories for comedies. But it's like, I think it's like a trend thing. And then it's like those shows are popular and then, all networks are like, we need hard, funny comedies. And then people pitch those and then those kind of like fall out of fashion too. But I think, I don't know, like for the Emmys, it's like, wait, you're Catholic, right?
Yes.
It's like, how like when...
Was raised, yes.
How like when they like when they like nominate a saint, it's like he has to have done like 5 miracles. Like I wonder if like this is a tortured metaphor. If like for the Emmys, it's like you have to produce you have to like show us proof of 10 jokes. Of 10 jokes and put it in there every episode. It's like, yeah, maybe they could make that rule, but it's also like, or not, who cares? Because The Bear's a really funny show, so is a really good show. Sometimes it's very funny, so it's like, I don't know. Who
I guess
cares?
it's just as a fan, I guess I like miss like the werewolf bar mitzvahs of it all.
Yes,
You know, like
yeah.
is there a show that could do that? Maybe Abbott. Maybe Abbott could swing.
Yeah,
the
but
werewolf
I
bar
think
mitzvah.
like you know, like Girls Five Ever got nominated for
great show.
writing.
Yeah.
That's a show like that, and the other two got nominated for writing. That's a
yeah, I
show
love
like
that
that.
show.
I
That's
think
true.
comedy writers
He's
will
crazy.
always love shows like that.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
you know, I don't know. I think it's fine.
And so
Stop complaining. It's fine.
I'm just curious, all right? So 30 Rock obviously, you know, led you to Mindy Project, which
Yeah.
is another phenomenal show, and then your own show, Great News.
Yeah.
And so that whole show was about sort of your mother-daughter dynamic,
Right.
which obviously shout out Kathy, I love her.
Thanks.
But is there anything you'd like write differently now that you're a mom?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, because Great News is on Netflix now, and people, I mean, the show came out in like 2007, like a long time ago, like 2017 or something. So many more people have found it and like texted me like, "Oh, I just saw your new show on Netflix," than like when it was on NBC. And you know, so I always am like, to like, because the show I'm working on right now is on Netflix, and I feel like I'm always like, you know, we could make more Great News, like everyone's around, we could make more, and they're always like, no, we're good, thank you. But I do wish, like, obviously when you write about your own life and your own relationships, it's like you always have tons of content, and like those relationships are evolving, and like I see how my mom is with my kids, and it's like, oh, there's a million, the show would write itself. There's like a million more episodes that, you know, you easily could have written as the show went on and the girl, you know, got married and had children and whatever else. But no one wants it, Marcos. No one wants it.
So then going for something like Saved by the Bell,
Uh-huh.
which was like, you know, like a reboot or a revival, whatever you want to call it. Was there anything ever, like outside of Saved by the Bell, obviously, because we already did it, like a 90s show or something you grew up with that you wanted to revive?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't. Oh, no. I can't think. I mean, they have done so many of
That's what I
them.
was gonna say. I
They've
was
done
like-
so many, and it does kind of seem like a thing that's like any trend in anything, where it's like, even when we were doing Saved by the Bell, I felt like before it came out, a lot of the talk was like, oh God, aren't there any new ideas? Another, you know, and I felt like by the time we were doing it, it was like, you couldn't just do a straight up like Fuller House. Like the idea of doing a reboot was already, I mean, they did a show reboot, was already like kind of hacky, that it was like you had to do a thing kind of that was a little more meta or a little more making fun of the show or something, because it was like people were already so past reboots. But yeah, I don't know. I'd love to not do a reboot. I think I'm doing one currently. Like
Yeah.
The Four Seasons is a remake.
that's true. It's like a
yeah, I'm
movie.
doing.
Yeah.
I just keep doing them as a remake of an Alan Alda movie from like 1980, and you know, and it's a totally different tone, and it's like a lot more grounded, and it's more like a kind of, you know, like a throwback, like Big Chill or like 30-something kind of vibe, I think. But past that, it's like, no, probably not. Unless, you know, unless someone's like, I'll back up a dump truck full of money if you'll do a, you know, if you'll do a Mall Madness movie, and then I'll be like, yep.
Yeah, like everything I tried to think of, like I was a big Boy Meets World guy growing up.
Yeah.
I did Girl Meets World. It was like every one I tried to find, I didn't realize they'd already rebooted. So I was
Yeah.
like, I can't do this one. I can't answer this
Well,
question.
there was such a moment where it was like a lot of people watched Fuller House, and it was like this kind of genius.
This
Well, I
is it.
guess like Bob
Bring it all
Greenblatt
back,
with
yeah.
with like Will and Grace was the first one, kind of
Oh, and
where
they
it
killed
went.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it was coming out, people were like, "What? Why would you do this again?" But it was like, it was tapping into the thing that's like, especially millennials, like people are so like obsessed with their own nostalgia and their own childhood that it makes so much sense that it's like, oh, of course, I'll watch this thing with my kids that I liked watching.
So before we get into like a big 20 questions lightning round, I have one last question here.
Okay.
So obviously every writer's room you've been in, when we were in one,
Yeah.
we watched a ton of just like dumb videos.
I know, but we can't do that anymore on Zoom.
I know, it sucks.
I know, but we get a lot more work
But we did
done.
watch so many stupid videos. I
Yes.
feel like that was like the post-lunch thing was like, all right, everybody, what did you see this week?
Yes.
So is there any video from any time period, any writer's room you were in that's like fully ingrained in your mind where you're like, I remember exactly watching this video?
A Funny or Die video?
No, any video.
Any
internet
video. Oh my God, a million. We were big on 30 Rock. Yeah, we were big on 30 Rock. We were obsessed with like news bloopers. like I don't know if you would know any of them, but have you ever heard
I've
of like?
watched quite. I went to journalism school. We had to watch.
Yeah, so it was like those were like our favorites.
Amazing.
Like some of them were. Did you ever see the And It Starts Right Now guy?
And it starts. Wait.
And it starts right now, and it's like they're at a news desk, and then a guy is like using one of those things. We're using one of those things. He's in like a lake where you spray water out of them,
those,
and
like,
you can
parka-
kind of
they have
fly.
to wear those, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they're doing like a throw to commercial or something, or a throw to the news, and they're like, you know, channel 11 at 7, and it starts right now, and he tries to take off, but then just gets like thrown into the water so hard. And then the people at the desk are laughing really hard. They're kind of like, it feels a little mean-spirited, but that one we used to watch a ton. And then there was another one. Oh, there was another one that's kind of dark. That was like a girl had been kidnapped or murdered or something near a lake in Warren, and the news person is like, and we have a picture of the suspect, Danger. And when it comes up, have you seen this? It's a picture of a hamster holding a clapboard. It's like
No, I
he's
have
the
not
one
seen that one.
who killed the girl. It's the best thing I've ever seen.
I honestly wish there was a video, like a TV show that was strictly news bloopers or just like interviews
So
on the
fun.
news.
I
Because
know.
like I know I went to journalism school and like having to grab people, like man on the street, it's like you don't know what you're gonna get.
No.
And it's like you kind of just gotta let it ride at some point. You're like,
Yeah.
look, I'm in a weird place. This is the best person I can
and you're
get
trying
for
to
this
be
opportunity.
serious. That's always the funniest
Yeah, and then
thing.
that's when you get
you're
like the apparently kid, and he's like apparently, you know, it's like you get like the best videos. All right, so let's
those
jump.
are my favorite.
Let's jump into our wrap up 20 questions. This is a speed round.
Okay,
I gotta
okay.
sit up for this one. So there's just gonna be a bunch really quick answers.
Okay.
1 words to some might be 5 words. I
Okay.
won't cut you off.
Okay.
All right. So first, least favorite job you've ever had.
One time I was a PA for The Sopranos, which sounds really cool, but I just had to like I had to just sit outside of a diner for like many hours in a chair in the heat.
Most used emoji.
Oh, like the melting face.
The melting one.
Yeah.
Amazing. Current favorite TV show.
I just finished Shogun. You like Shogun?
Oh, love Shogun.
Oh,
So
really
good.
into Shogun.
Guilty pleasure TV show.
Oh, I watched everything. I watch every
Reality.
90 day. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I,
I
remember
watch
that. We
like
talked 90 Day
any
Fiance in the room.
Yeah, like
Every day.
anything where there's sister wives, teen pregnancy, all of it.
Okay, what kind of phone was your first cell phone?
I mean, I'm like so old that when I was 16, like I think I had I don't remember. I had a pink Razor at one point.
Oh, I had the Crazer. I think it was like the next evolution.
Yeah,
It
you're
sucked.
younger.
It was
than me.
terrible. First celeb crush.
You know, probably Zach Morris.
Amazing. Last movie that made you cry.
Every movie always. But what have I seen recently? I watched the original Inside Out with my daughter, and she and
Oh,
I
man.
wept. Yeah,
That one's
it
brutal.
was a rough one.
Favorite website that no longer exists.
Oh my God, I have no idea. What websites don't exist?
I don't know. They probably all still exist. I guess favorite website that you no longer use or used to use a ton and now you're like
used
it's
to
probably
use a
dead.
ton.
Like like MySpace, something like that. It's
Right,
like
right,
some
right.
website that you were like,
Ask
that was the
Jeeves.
website. Ask Jeeves.
I remember really in the
Honestly-
beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna
What-
be the thing we all use," and then
What's
it
up
was like
with
it
Jeeves?
wasn't.
They just let it
He was
die.
like a butler.
I remember he was like, "What's up?" I feel like they let him
Google
die.
just
Do
ate
you
it.
know what a JoJo Siwa is?
Yeah, of course. I've
amazing.
known JoJo Siwa for forever.
gotta make sure.
because I watched Dance Moms.
Of course, of course.
Love JoJo Siwa.
Okay, so best fast food and what is your order there?
You'd think it would be McDonald's because I eat it a lot, but it's actually Burger King, and I
what's
get like a Whopper, and
Okay,
sometimes
classic.
I get onion rings.
Okay, classic meal. Does ASMR make you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I don't really like it.
Okay, cool. If you could meet any comedian, dead or alive, who?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the name.
That's
of,
right. We can pass. We can
the name
pass.
of one comedian.
I don't know any comedians at all.
Charlie Chaplin. What was that? What was
And he's
your
here.
life like?
you know?
No, I don't know. I can't think of anyone.
All-time favorite comedy movie.
Groundhog Day.
Amazing. Drake or Kendrick?
Kendrick. That's
Okay,
a cooler
good.
answer.
Yeah, that's probably a cool
Oh.
one. Cartoons are real people. This one is one I just threw in there. Cartoons
What?
are real people.
Real people.
I'm just making sure. I
what?
don't know. If you got cast in a biopic, Who would you be playing?
Who would I play?
Yeah, who would, if this was a biopic about someone and you were playing the main character, who would
Like,
it be?
who do I look like, you think?
I guess it could be who you look like or who you would want to play or who you think you could play.
Oh, who I would want. These are harder than you let on.
I threw a bunch in here.
Oh, I don't know. Heather Dubrow from The Real Housewives.
Amazing. Favorite social media platform from any time period?
I'm like an old loser woman, so Instagram probably.
Okay, amazing. Ice cream topping of choice.
Nerds.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then who is the funniest person you know, period, anywhere?
Period. I'm Tina Fey, right? Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, Tina Fey or tied with my cousin Tammy. My cousin Tammy's so fucking funny. She's a teacher in Pennsylvania. You would die if you talked to her.
Cousin
She's so
Tammy?
funny. Yeah, my cousin Tammy.
We got to get Cousin Tammy on here at some
Equal,
point.
both.
Please. All right, so thank you so much, Tracy Wigfield, for joining us. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Follow us for more content like this at Funny or Die. And of course, the final question, internet, good or bad?
Oh, good. Oh,
Good.
I think so. I mean, it's so horrible, but I think
In the best way.
yeah, and I mean, I think it brings people together who otherwise, you know,
Fair.
would just be like lone perverts or whatever.
Yeah.
So also
So
bad.
It's for the lone perverts.
Yeah.
And, thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
thank you all
This
for
was fun.
watching. We'll catch you soon.